welcome to The Rational Live. I'm your host, David Dole. A lot of stuff to get to today, but before I even do a little breakdown of what's coming, let me grab some chats. I already see one super chat here, Fully Insider, saying, political term Tory is an insult derived from the Middle Irish word Tory adhi, modern Irish Tory, meaning outlaw or robber. The more you know. All right, I had no idea, but it's good to learn that. Thank you, Fully Insider. MK946 says, can you cover what's going on with the Build Back Better Act? I don't know what's going on with the Build Back Better Act. Is that still happening? I figured once the Progressive Caucus chair, Pramila Jayapal, gave up all their leverage that it was dead. As far as I know, it's not going anywhere. Manchin, I know, said he doesn't care to vote for it this year, so I don't see anything happening with that. So I don't know. I mean, when it comes to that, everything that we predicted, we as in people on the left, with that bill, came true. We said if they gave up their leverage by voting for the infrastructure package first, then there'd be no vote on, or if there was going to be a vote on the Build Back Better Act, it would be stripped down considerably. It's been stripped down, and there's no vote. So I don't know what else to add there. Bivaria says, I want to stay, but someone is peeling an egg on TikTok live. Is that all I need to do? Is peel an egg on YouTube and you'll stay here? Oh, an uncooked egg. Well, in that case, I understand. But hopefully once they're done, you'll come back. What's on the menu today? I'll get to that in just a second. Let me grab a couple more here. Then we'll get to the preview. Yankee Doodle says the Starbucks update was such a relief to hear some ground had been broken in the union-related news. Yeah, I covered that yesterday. I got to say, that for me came out of nowhere. I mean, who would think after all these unsuccessful attempts with other companies like Amazon that Starbucks would be the one to break through with the union, but they did. So they still have to get, a contract and all that. So, there's more steps to go through. But the first hurdle is crossed, actually voting to support unionizing. So amazing to see. All right. Winston says, did you see that Greenwald dodged a debate with the serfs? I did see that. Yeah. I don't know what else to add to that. I don't know what's going on with Glenn Greenwald. I don't know, but I had on a guest earlier, was it last week? I think it was last week, to discuss Greenwald's clear shift. So go watch that interview with some actual data and read his article on all that. All right. I'm going to move on. So today, before I'll grab more chats later, of course, after the next story. But, whoa, let me change that to cut. All right. So today, on today's show, Hillary Clinton, no, not her crying about her speech. I decided not to cover that. Actually, I may still cover that, but I'm not covering that today. But she gave some advice to Democrats, and I want to explore her advice, as well as Claire Mccaskill chiming in on that. So we'll get to that shortly. Also, a Muslim teacher has been removed from class for being Muslim. A completely insane story. I'll discuss more on that later. Also, COVID-19 is destroying pro-Trump counties. And so there's new data on that. I'll get to that. And later on, the wrap-up, including who Chris Christie blames for getting COVID. It may or may not surprise you, but there's a lot in that wrap up. And of course, that comes at the end. All right. I see another super chat here. Let me grab that one. Oh, two more. Red Light Max says, David, have you seen Milo's new low? He's literally selling religious trinkets on YouTube. Yeah, I did see that. The Catholic Militant Shop Show with Milo. Yeah. I think that video came out a couple weeks ago. I didn't really know what to add to that, so I didn't cover it, but it's sad, but it does show you that deplatforming works. Once Milo was deplatformed, that was it for him. I mean, now he's selling religious trinkets on a Catholic shopping channel. It's pretty wild. Lawn Gnome says odds on another scary start to the year, January 6th, and I think the Iran strike kicked off this year, and now there's rumblings of Russia and Ukraine. Yeah, the whole Russia putting troops on the border between them and Ukraine. It sounds like it's more of a ploy to try and push back against the U.S. and their continued growth of NATO, but so it could just be all hot air on Russia's part, but they do have troops on the border. You know, I don't want to think too much about that. It's too depressing. The idea of, you know, a potential war is not something I really want to think about right now, unless I have to. Okay, there we go. Let me start with the first story, which I need to prep now. Hold up. Here we go. Prepping on the fly. Almost ready. All right, here we go. Hillary Clinton sat down with MSNBC's Willie Geist, and there's a number of things I want to comment on here, including Clinton's advice to Democrats, but also her warning about Republicans. So I have 3 clips. First, let's get to her warning here, which I think this is indisputable.
We have to do much more than we're doing now to fight back against this very organized effort to undermine our elections, to put into place laws and regulations that are contrary to fair process, to fair voting. And I worry that still too many people are like, oh, you know, it can't be that bad, or it can't go that far. It's a failure of imagination.
All right, I think Hillary here is right on point. Democrats are not taking Republicans seriously. After January 6th, it was clear that that was an attempt at an insurrection. Now this came out today or last night. Trump's White House passed around a PowerPoint on how to end American democracy. Former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows handed over a trove of pre-January 6th documentation. It's damning stuff. They have a PowerPoint on how they're going to stop Biden from becoming president. Now, obviously, it was not successful, but would you really trust them with another opportunity? Democrats are so incredibly weak, not even just on what they should be doing in terms of certain economic policy and helping people like universal health care and that kind of thing, higher wages, but also just in terms of the basics, fighting Republicans. They can't even do that. They're in power right now, and they can't even do the basics. So Hillary Clinton, I think, is right to warn about that. But now let's get to the dumb stuff. So Hillary Clinton giving advice to Democrats here. Now, look, it's not really her fault. She's, of course, asked about what her advice would be to Democrats. But let me just get into this. So here's the first clip where Hillary is giving her thoughts on what Democrats should do to win.
I think that it is a time for some, careful thinking about what wins elections, and not just in deep blue districts where a Democrat and a liberal Democrat or so-called progressive Democrat is going to win. First of all, we don't know what the state of the map is going to be after all of the redistricting. It appears as though the Republicans in a number of states are doing their best to eliminate as many seats that Democrats can be competitive in. And so we've got to be very clear-eyed about what it's going to take to hold the House and the Senate in 2022. I understand why people want to argue for their priorities. That's what they believe they were elected to do. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to get done if you don't have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate. And our majority comes from people who win in much more difficult districts. And our majority in the Senate comes from people who can win in not just blue states and hold those wins, as we saw didn't happen in Virginia, but can win in more purplish states.
All right. Now, if you're sort of unclear on what Hillary Clinton is saying there. It's going to become a lot more clear in the second clip when we get to Claire Mccaskill's thoughts on this. But essentially, she's saying here that in order to win in red districts, you have to be more conservative, more moderate, as they like to say, even though it's just meaning more conservative. You have to be pro-corporate. Somehow that appeals to people. Now, she's right on the point about redistricting. Yes, Republicans right now, that's another issue that Democrats should be dealing with, and that is going to threaten a lot of seats in the House. But look, when it comes to Hillary's advice here, losers can sometimes offer some insight into how to win based on their experiences and what they did wrong. But if your insight is the exact same strategy that you took to lose, then your advice is garbage. If your advice to Democrats is just do what I did and you'll win, but you lost, why would they do what you did when you lost? So she references there Virginia, Tara McAuliffe. Tara McAuliffe was her candidate. That was her candidate, an ultimate corporate Democrat. From New York Magazine here, the Hillary playbook does not work. So Sarah Jones goes on to write, to recap, Virginia Democrats united behind an unpopular Democrat who spent years in public life and ran on not being Trump while failing to offer voters a compelling alternative vision. That strategy didn't work in 2016 when the candidate was Hillary Clinton, and there was no way it was going to work now. While it's arguably true that the GOP remains the party of Trump and that a reactionary lurks behind Youngkin's polite facade, reality does not necessarily dictate voter behavior. Moreover, McAuliffe didn't actually have to try to convince anybody that Youngkin is a reactionary at all. He just had to explain what he, in contrast to Youngkin, would offer to voters. And since he's already served one term as governor, this shouldn't have been difficult to accomplish, yet it was beyond him. McAuliffe offered nothing. Much like these corporate Democrats, no universal health care, no living wage, no higher taxes on massive corporations and the wealthy. It's all a pro-corporate message masked through very vague language. McAuliffe inspired nobody, and he lost. You can't keep betting on the Republican candidate being worse. You can't simply campaign on that guy being Donald Trump. That's not going to work every time. It may work sometimes. It worked for Biden because 4 years of Trump was a complete disaster in the middle of COVID. I really think anybody could have beat Trump at that point. But for the most part, that does not win. What can win and what has worked, let's look at Katie Porter. Katie Porter flipped a Republican district that only ever had a Republican representative. She's the first Democrat in that district, and she's progressive. Backs universal health care, a living wage, actually fights for the working class. Here is a real example of someone that ran as a progressive and won. Whenever you see these people, and I'll get to Claire Mccaskill in a second here, whenever you see these people, make these points about how you have to be a moderate or more conservative Democrat to win these red districts, notice how they never use any examples. They may point to, Joe Biden, but again, that was a unique election where I think anybody could have won against Trump. But they have no real examples of something like this happening, where a conservative Democrat flips a deeply red district and holds on to it. But you have to actually speak to voters. The key here is bringing out people that don't normally vote. That's the key to Democratic victories, is bring out people that are disillusioned by politics. You have to bring a real message with specifics in terms of how you will help them, especially economically, as so many people are struggling all across the country. But let me get now to Claire Mccaskill. So a Democratic senator who also lost her state by being too conservative chimes in on Hillary's comments.
Hillary Clinton pointing this out is really, really a big deal. And I hope that the progressive wing of my party takes it to heart. The power comes from a majority. The majority comes from the middle, because we're not talking about places that are bright blue. We're talking about places where they do care whether or not parents feel like they have any control over their child's school. Forget about what specifically they're teaching. It's about understanding that in these times, parents, and a lot of these parents in the suburbs, women, mothers in the suburbs, came to Joe Biden because he was the candidate of the middle, not that he was the candidate of the extreme. And if we don't get that, if we spend all our time talking about the things that bright blue places want to focus on and not on the things that moderates want to hear, we are not going to hold the majority.
Again, so stupid. So stupid. Doesn't cite any other victory, cites Joe Biden, who, if you go back and, again, obviously I covered that extensively while it was going on. Joe Biden won the Democratic primary because he was being pushed out there as the more electable candidate by the press. They were looking at him, oh, he's been there before. He appeals to both sides. So Joe Biden's the right choice. That fooled enough people where they picked Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders in the primary. Now, as I said, I think regardless, almost anybody could have beat Trump at that point. We're talking about the middle of COVID. We're talking about a disastrous 4 years. People were tired of Trump. They wanted something different. And that's also why they picked Biden. It felt like the safe choice to a lot of voters. They may have liked Bernie more. I mean, you look at, if you look at what ballot measures passed. So in Florida, they passed a higher minimum wage. And in exit polls in the primary in Florida, they supported Medicare for all, even though they chose Joe Biden. In fact, in every state that Joe Biden won, there was exit polling showing that the voters supported, a majority of Democratic voters supported Medicare for all. Yet they picked Joe Biden. So it wasn't because of Joe Biden's policies. They picked Joe Biden because Joe Biden felt safe to them. You can't bet on that in these other races. You can't bet on that when it comes to the Senate or when it comes to the House. You have to actually speak to working class voters, get people out that don't normally vote. That is how you win. And you do that by speaking to their needs. And just one last thing, the idea that Claire Mccaskill at the beginning of that clip says, I hope the progressive wing listens to Hillary Clinton. I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. There is no one that is progressive that cares about what Hillary Clinton has to say. So, it's important to revisit these arguments every now and then just to remind people how stupid this shit is. I mean, you have these two losers here that clearly did not learn anything from their loss. Now, people, they have ups and downs in their careers. That's fine. You can have lessons from those careers and spread that knowledge. But in these two cases, Hillary Clinton and Claire Mccaskill, they learned the opposite. They lost doing what they are now preaching that Democrats should do. It's completely insane. Okay. That's that story. Let me grab some chats here. Scrolling up to find my place to make sure I don't miss anybody. All right. David Mr. Kidd says, how can Clinton talk about fair elections when the DNC screwed over Bernie? Well, we know Hillary's not going to ever even acknowledge that. But yeah, obviously it was weighed heavily in favor of both Hillary and Biden in both primaries. But yeah, they're never going to even acknowledge that. Schubert says, thank you for all you do. Well, thank you for your very, very generous donation. And let me grab some randoms too. Turbo Tempest says, Kirsten Sinema ran and got elected as a progressive. Yep. Go back and watch my videos on cinema. Last week I covered one. She had a 2018 ad where she was talking about lowering the price of pharmaceuticals and lowering the price of healthcare generally. And now she's fighting against the prescription drug provision in the Build Back Better Act to lower prescription drug prices. So yeah, that's, this is why I always go between, are they being disingenuous or are they really stupid? Like when it comes to Claire McCaskill, I just think she's dumb. I mean, because she's always been a conservative. When it comes to Kirsten Sinema, I think she knows better. She knows what got her elected. She ran on actually helping people. Now she's doing the opposite. So it depends on the person, obviously. But yeah, clearly, when it comes to them wanting to win and knowing how to win, a lot of them speak progressive and then do the opposite when they're actually in power. Okay. Let me do a quick little break here, and then I will do the next story, which is a Muslim teacher getting removed from class because she is Muslim. Yep. I'll be right back. All right. This next story is a wild one. A grade 3 teacher in Quebec has been removed from her classroom for being Muslim. That's right. Under a new and dangerous law in Quebec, you cannot wear a hijab as while working in some civil servant positions, including teaching. Now, while this law is being framed as being secular because it bars all religious symbols, clearly it falls disproportionately on marginalized communities. So, more here from CBC News.
The messages are clear outside this school in Chelsea, Quebec. Support for Fatima Anvari, the grade 3 teacher who was removed from her classroom job for wearing a hijab.
Honestly, at that second, it was just shock. It was very hard to process.
Anvari is concerned about her safety, so CBC News has agreed not to show her face.
Kids were so confused. They saw me in the hallway and they asked me why I cannot be their teacher anymore.
The school board says it had to follow the rules of Quebec's Bill 21 that prohibits public sector workers from wearing religious symbols.
We're not in favor of this bill. We find it discriminatory. We've stated so, but as citizens of the province of Quebec, we are expected to follow the law and will do so.
It's a popular law in the province, but it's facing several court challenges. And English school boards like this one have fought for an exemption. But last month, a judge ruled the law will apply to everyone while the cases play out in the courts. One student made this card, saying she misses Ms. Anvari and thinks her hijab is awesome. Her mom says the decision shocked her.
My kids didn't know what had happened, so I had to, on the spot, try to explain to them why a teacher had lost her job because of, sorry.
The outcry made the Quebec law a hot topic in Ottawa again today.
If they want to wear a hijab, it should be their choice. It's not government's business to impose what to wear and what not to wear.
Others took to Twitter to call on the federal government to act. Conservative MP Kyle Seaback calls the bill a disgrace and says it has to be opposed in the courts. And while the three main federal party leaders say they personally oppose Bill 21, not one of them has committed to a federal intervention to challenge it in the courts. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, Canadians like to pretend that we aren't as racist or as bigoted as Americans, but this law clearly says otherwise. How this was allowed to go through still is shocking to me. But there's a continued fight against it. Hopefully at some point those fights are successful and it's reversed. But in the meantime, you're seeing the actual people being impacted by this. Just disgusting. So more here from CBC. Anvari says the hijab is now part of her identity. Quote, yes, I'm a Muslim, but for me, the hijab holds other meanings of just my identity and how I've chosen to represent myself as a strong person in a world that may not want me to be myself, she said. But it's still a religious symbol at the end of the day, so that's why it has a conflict with the law. Going on here, neither Anvari nor the parents who spoke with CBC blame the school, which they all said fosters a welcoming and inclusive atmosphere. Instead, the parents say the law, Bill 21, should never have been passed. Quote, I'd like the government to see what it's like for an 8-year-old to lose their teacher because of something like this, said Kirsten Taylor Bozeman, whose daughter attended class with Miss Fatima, as students call her. Now, I understand, the desire here to protect the school. I get it. They're just following the law. But it would be nice, occasionally, for these institutions, these people to just stand up and say, you know what? No, this is wrong. We're not going to remove her from her position. Was there an outcry to get her out of the classroom? It doesn't sound like it. They just went ahead and was like, oh, wait, this is the law, so we have to do this now. No, just fight it. Like, you have to at some point stand up against this kind of bullshit. But yeah, I mean, ultimately it is the fault of the bill or the law, obviously. But, people have to take some agency here and just, if you see something that is completely ridiculous, that threatens civil liberties, stand up against it. This tweet from Kristen or Krista saying, this week a teacher was removed from her class in Quebec because she wears a hijab. At the school I work at in Quebec, we're doing Christmas activities, including songs mentioning prayer and a book on the birth of Jesus. Tell me again how Bill 21 is about secularism. Of course the bill isn't. It's all about using power against the marginalized. Last thing here, as I said, there's a continued fight against this, so, let's hope this fight goes somewhere, but these fights have been ongoing. This is from May 6th. So, we're going to have to wait and see where this all goes. But in the meantime, real people are being impacted, and it is just disgusting to see. All right. Enough negative shit. The next story, also horrible. I mean, it's just not, it's we can't get away from shit news, apparently. But don't worry, at the end, the wrap up, there's maybe some good aspects of the wrap up. A new poll. What does that new poll show? I don't know. We'll find out. And Gen Z doing something brilliantly. So that's later. But before that, there's a story on COVID destroying Trump counties. So we'll get to that shortly. Let me grab some random chats before I do that. Let me just bring this up. There we go. Black Caucus says, is Quebec really the Florida of Canada? I don't know if there really is a comparison to Quebec when it comes to the U.S. Progressive Voice says, who is David Dole? I don't know. Who is he? It's a very deep question. Black Caucus says, yeah, religious freedom always works one way. They don't protect other religions, only Christianity and stuff. Normally, religious freedom should be for everyone. All right. All right. Actually, there's one last thing I want to mention here, as this reminded me of it. Agua Pella Barba says, woke politics loses bad in purple districts. So this is something that I actually wish I brought up in that discussion, the Hillary Clinton clips. That, yeah, part of the reason that McAuliffe lost is he didn't have a proper response to the critical race theory bullshit that was being spread by the GOP there. So instead of discussing how, like, I think one of his comments that blew up was he said that parents don't belong in the classroom. Massive gaffe. Like, you don't say that kind of shit. So yeah, when it comes to, and that isn't, to be clear, nothing is wrong with the actual critical race theory, as that is something being taught in colleges. It's about the response to the GOP bullshit. You have to be able to know how to call that out in a way where you're not hurting yourself in the process. So Terry McAuliffe clearly did not know how to do that and ended up hurting himself. But yeah, this is what all Republicans have are cultural issues. So they will fearmonger about cultural issues, and they're always going to have a certain amount of people that are going to vote for them just because of that. But there are those swing voters on the cultural issue that you can get if you, number one, are able to reject the GOP bullshit on those cultural issues and actually tell them the reality of what's going on, and two, actually offer a inspiring, hopeful message. So Terry McAuliffe, of course, didn't do either of those and lost to Glenn Youngkin. Okay. Let me get to the next story, but I got to prep it, so I'll be right back. All right, here we go. This story and then the wrap up, and then I'll grab all the chats and we'll talk for a bit and then I'll go. All right. There is now more data showing that COVID-19 is tearing through Trump counties. And of course, it has to do with the lower vaccination rate. So I have a couple of graphs to show you here. But first, this data is from NPR. So they write here, NPR looked at deaths per 100,000 people in roughly 3,000 counties across the U.S. for May 2021, the point at which vaccinations widely became available. People living in counties that went 60% or higher for Trump in November 2020 had 2.73 times the death rate of those that went for Biden. Counties with an even higher share of the vote for Trump saw higher COVID-19 mortality rates. In October, the reddest 10th of the country saw death rates that were 6 times higher than the bluest 10th, according to Charles Gaba, an independent healthcare analyst who's been tracking partisanship trends during the pandemic and helped to review NPR's methodology. Those numbers have dropped slightly in recent weeks, Gaba says. It's back down to around 5.5 times higher. Now, there was actually a story on this earlier in the year, I think from a few months ago, showing the same thing. This is just even more data showing this, but taking a look at the two graphs they have here, counties that went heavily for Donald Trump have seen much lower vaccination rates and much higher death rates from COVID. So first, looking at the vaccinations. So the overall average is the black plus symbol. Average of heavily Biden counties is the blue, and average of heavily Trump counties is the red. So you see here the percentage of adults vaccinated for Biden voters, or Biden counties, I should say, it's higher. For Trump counties is much lower. And of course, that leads to the death rate. So deaths per 100,000 since May 1st is much higher for Trump voters compared to Biden voters down here. This is obviously connected. Now, what still kind of blows my mind is that Trump is vaccinated. Like, he was one of the first ones to get the vaccine. Now, I know he didn't heavily promote that he got the vaccine, but it eventually came out, and then he even said it during one of his rallies later on, after he was already out of office, that he got the vaccine. Yet still, people are not getting vaccinated. Like, if that's not going to do it, nothing's going to do it. Like, I know I have no power over any Republican voter and their choice to get the vaccine, so I don't even try to convince them anymore because I'm not going to convince them. But it's remarkable to me that in the face of all this data, and not even just forget the data, of course they don't care about data, but powerful people, including ones that they love, like Donald Trump, getting the vaccine, even in the face of that, they're not getting it. You know, if the vaccine was not good for you, all the wealthiest people and politicians would not be the first ones to get it. They wouldn't be getting it at all. So, what is the logic behind these voters not getting it? And of course, it's not just the voters, it's also the counties. So there are, unfortunately, people that are in those counties that may be more at risk because of their age or because of their health risks that are now more at risk simply because they're in a Trump county, even if they may have voted for a Democrat. More here from HuffPost. Though demographics varied widely among the counties, NPR determined that the single biggest factor in the dramatic difference was misinformation about COVID-19, which was linked to lower vaccination rates. That held up even when controlling for age, which is the primary demographic risk for COVID-19 mortality, NPR noted. The study found the higher the vote share for Trump, the lower the vaccination rate. Quote, an unvaccinated person is 3 times as likely to lean Republican as they are to lean Democrat, said Liz Hamill, vice president of survey research at the Kaiser Family Foundation, a nonpartisan health policy think tank. Polling by the foundation revealed that Republicans are far more likely to believe false statements about COVID-19 and vaccines, but all but 6% of Republicans believe that one or more false statements about COVID-19 and vaccines might be true, and 46% believed 4 or more statements might be true. Only 14% of Democrats tend to believe 4 or more false statements about the disease. So again, showing you the clear partisan divide here on the misinformation around COVID-19. Now, this 14% are the ones that I try to talk to when doing COVID-19 stories. A lot of that worry is around Big Pharma and, you know, how they can't trust Big Pharma and all that. But you can acknowledge how capitalism, how the healthcare system essentially is commodified, how that is a horrible system. And of course, Big Pharma making a ton of money off of these vaccines. You can acknowledge that is terrible, but that is a problem with capitalism. That isn't a problem with these vaccines. The science behind the vaccines was largely publicly funded. So you can't claim that these companies are simply making the vaccine to make money, even though that is a major piece of it. Of course, they wouldn't be doing it otherwise. But understanding that the basis for the vaccine, the research behind it, is publicly funded. All these companies are doing is taking advantage of that opportunity. So, and of course, just think logically. They want people to stay alive so they can keep giving them more pharmaceuticals. So, you know, what would be the point of killing people with a vaccine? It's not going to help Big Pharma. But, you know, when it comes to the right and their conspiracies about the vaccines, I don't even try. If you're going to believe some of that shit, I don't know what I can say to you. But it is, I don't know, I guess not surprising to see this. It's just amazing to me that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Trump got the vaccine. It doesn't matter that high-profile officials and wealthy individuals have the vaccine. People are still questioning it, and it clearly is leading to more deaths in those counties. Okay. There we go. Last one is the wrap-up. And before I do that, I see a chat here. Super chat. Let me grab it. Ryan Nowicki says, if R takes POTUS, and so if Republicans take the presidency and they continue to refine their election overturning efforts, do you see there will... This is cutting off. Do you see there being a backlash that will drive election changes? I don't know how are things going to change if Republicans are in power, I guess is my question. There's obviously going to be a backlash, but what else is it going to take, I guess is my question. Trump was president for 4 years. They tried to steal the next election. Democrats are sitting on their hands. So if they don't take any serious steps now, that's it. Like they will steal. The GOP will steal the next election if they're able to successfully win the next one against Biden in 2024. Forget the midterms; they're done. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure how Democrats are not going to lose seats. But in the next election with Biden, if he loses, I just envision the GOP just stealing every election. That's at that point, it's over. So I don't know what else to say there. I mean, there's been enough warning signs. There's been a clear attempt to take an election. What more do Democrats need to see? All right. Wrap up, right? What a happy live stream this is today. Jesus Christ. I mean, there was some good news. The problem is I covered all the good news this week. I covered the union victory at Starbucks. What else did I cover this week? That was positive, I should say. What else happened? Bernie Sanders tanking Big Pharma stock with a single tweet. That was a good story. Fox News freaking out over the Christmas tree catching on fire. That was a fun story. Chris Cuomo officially fired. That was a fun story. I covered all the fun stories today, or this week. So no fun stories left. Just negative shit. All right, I will be right back. But I do have, in the wrap-up, as I said earlier, a couple of fun items. So we will get to those. I will be right back. All right. Here we go. Some fun stuff in this segment. I guarantee it. It's not just doom and gloom. All right. It is time once again for the weekly wrap-up. These are stories that I collect throughout the week that I didn't have a chance to do a full video on, but are worth mentioning here. So let me start with this poll. This is from a new Harris poll. Net favorables. You see a lot of politicians here, and for some reason, both Cuomos. I don't really know why. But look at who's at the top. Mr. Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying anything, but I don't know. If Joe Biden can't do 2024, I know the man to replace him. But of course, would Bernie be up for it a third time? I don't know. But look, this part is depressing, though. Ron DeSantis, right up there. In fact, Trump is a -5. Ron DeSantis. That's who, apart from Trump coming back potentially, I'm also worried about his little minions like DeSantis here. So keep an eye on that. But if you had Bernie, then there's no worries. Next one here. Chris Christie reveals who gave him COVID-19. This is amazing. Watch.
If Mark Meadows knew that somebody that I was sitting across from for 4 days had popped a positive test, he, as the White House Chief of Staff, put aside the president for a second. Obviously, the president, as my friend, should have looked at me and told me that. That's obvious. But I think what's less obvious is that Mark Meadows saved this for his book.
Yeah.
He saved it for a book. He didn't tell us. I went into the hospital in the intensive care unit. He didn't call and tell me. So I think that's inexcusable.
You had always suspected that you got it from the president. Is that right?
Well, the only reason I suspected it was because he was the only person who I didn't know his testing regimen. I was in close contact with. All the other people, we spoke about the fact that.
So did this confirm for you that you did, in fact, get it for the president?
Oh, I think it's undeniable.
Yeah. And I mean, you were very sick. You could have died.
Sure.
Yeah. Amazing. Donald Trump gave Chris Christie, officially, for sure, gave Chris Christie COVID-19. It was already suspected before, but now he's saying that's what happened. What I find kind of amusing about this clip is that he's actually angrier at Mark Meadows than Donald Trump. Part of the reason I have to think is because Chris Christie still is hoping to have some kind of future in politics. And if he wants to be a Republican, he has to kiss Trump's ass. So he's not going to be as angry at Trump as maybe he should be about this. But it is just amazing. I don't even know what else to say. Imagine being this much of a bitch. Like, it's just incredible. All right. This story here from National Observer. Canada's richest families hold nearly 25% of Canada's wealth, while the bottom 40% of Canadians own just over 1%. We can't have a healthy democracy with such obscene inequality. The ultra-wealthy use their wealth to corrupt the democratic process, says Dimitri Lascaris, who I hope is the next Green Party leader. We'll see. I hope he runs. But, yeah, just, for people out there, it's not just obscene inequality in the U.S. It's also, of course, in Canada. Next story here, and actually the last story, but this is a 3-tab story, as you can see. Starting with AJ+, saying Kellogg says it will permanently replace most of the 1,400 workers who went on strike over a new system that cuts newer workers' pay and benefits. Workers reported 16-hour shifts and 80-hour weeks during the pandemic and rejected a proposal giving only veteran workers a 3% raise. Disgusting. But good to see these workers standing up and fighting back, understanding their worth. But this story gets amazing. So Liz Schuler here tweeting out, Kellogg's is trying to replace the 1,400 striking workers. Millennials and Gen Z flooded the jobs posting with fake applications and crashed the system. This is what solidarity looks like. I absolutely love this. So, of course, Kellogg's trying to replace these striking workers is a completely disgusting move, but that's why we got some smart people in my gen and the gen below me. Great work here, but it goes even further. Kurt Eichenwald here tweeting out, I told earlier how Gen Z crashed Kellogg's website by submitting bogus applications online when it sought job apps from strike breakers to replace union workers. Update, one of them wrote a program which uses random data to submit bogus applications to Kellogg's 24 hours a day. I absolutely love it. So there you go. A positive story. Doesn't happen all the time, but here is a clearly positive story this week. Good to see. That is your weekly wrap-up. All right. Happy news. Happy news. It's hard to find, but if you search hard enough, you will find some good news out there. All right. Let me grab some chats. Where did I stop? Here we go. Oh, cutting off again. Why is it doing this? All right. Fully Insider says thoughts on or aware of the British government caught breaking their own COVID rules by having 3 parties and then being caught trying to cover it up. So I haven't heard this. I heard there was something going on with the government, but I didn't, you know, being not a UK resident myself, I wasn't too tuned into what was happening. That sounds wild though. Is somebody going to be, you know, resigning over that? That sounds pretty crazy to do that. Like, I don't know how you can do that and not know you would not get caught. Unless they're just fully aware that, you know, if they got caught, they'll be fine anyways. Maybe they didn't really care. But I imagine most of them did not want to get caught doing this. But that's wild. Mary Morrissey says, I watch all your videos. You might be my #1 news source besides the Majority Report. Love what you do despite all the batshit crazy news this week. Glad I finally caught a live. Thank you, Mary, for showing up, and thank you for your very generous donation as well. Thank you so much. All right. Let me grab some randos and then get out of here. I got to play Halo, guys. Halo Infinite. I made a big mistake last night. One of the biggest mistakes of my life, actually. I decided to watch the Video Game Awards, and it was horrible. It was like 3 hours long. Just one big commercial. There was like maybe 1 or 2 good announcements. There was a good trailer for Hellblade 2 that looked really actually spectacular. But and then the Sonic game looks pretty good. But apart from that, there was just so many you could tell a lot of these companies just paid for, you know, a commercial spot because they knew there'd be a lot of eyeballs on it, and they prioritized that over, you know, actual substance. So it was horrible. But the reason I brought that up is because I could have been playing Halo Infinite instead. I started the campaign. It's very, very fun. I've been playing online now for a few weeks, and I am deep into it. So definitely playing some Halo this weekend if I can get some time. Once the kid goes to bed, and my partner goes to bed pretty early too, can't complain. So I get like a few hours to myself, and it's a wonderful, wonderful time. Lawn Gnome says favorite holiday traditions and or music. Traditions. I like to eat Quality Street chocolates. I'm not sure if you know what those are, but I grew up eating those. So every Christmas, I like to have some Quality Street chocolate. Also, Terry's Chocolate Orange, also a good holiday tradition. Most of my traditions revolve around eating food. So whether it's chocolate, seafood, Portuguese seafood, a big holiday tradition, as long as I can get it. I mean, our family now, you know, we're not doing the big get-togethers that we used to, so I don't get to have that Portuguese food the way I used to in the past. So hopefully, maybe, somehow I can still get some Portuguese food this year. I'll see. But otherwise, yeah, it's mostly about food. So I can't really think of any other tradition I have. Celeste says, do you like Christmas music? I do like Christmas music, actually. Though I have not really been listening to any for some reason. Maybe because I've been working all the time. But no, 100%. I definitely dig Christmas. I feel like now with a child too, I'm going to enjoy Christmas a lot more. I feel like, I don't know, once I turn like 18 till now, Christmas hasn't been as enjoyable as it was for obvious reasons compared to when I was a kid. But now that I get to have now that I have my own child, and we get to, you know, relive some of those traditions and memories and holidays, hopefully it'll be a return to some of that holiday cheer. What else? Typical Canadian says, when it comes down to protecting the elections, do you think the likes of Manchin would be willing to change the filibuster? No, I don't. I think I mean, if that was the case, then he'd be doing it now. I don't think he cares. I think he cares about his next election. I think that's what he cares about. He is, he's a rare case where I would say you actually probably do have to be a conservative to win that state. I mean, maybe if you had somebody who was, I don't know, a high-profile West Virginian who was someone like a Richard Ojeda who actually spoke to the working class. The issue is he isn't a big enough name, I think, in West Virginia to really be able to defeat someone like Joe Manchin in a primary. But if you had someone like that as an alternative, then maybe you could have a real progressive in West Virginia. But for the most part, they are very pro-Trump, very conservative. So he's worried about the next election. I don't think he cares about anything else. Right. Oh, new chat here. Throwing back the apple says, OMG, throw back to Quality Street. The round caramel was my favorite growing up. Yeah, that one's good. My favorite is their strawberry cream and the orange cream. Those two are fantastic. But the caramel's good too, as well as the long caramel with the chocolate covering. That one's also good. Black Caucus says Christmas movies like Home Alone are good though. Never seen The Polar Express. Christmas movies, I got to start watching some this month to get into the Christmas spirit. Home Alone for sure. Die Hard, a great Christmas movie that is often forgot. National Lampoons, that's probably my favorite Christmas movies. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Yeah. But Home Alone's up there. Die Hard's up there. A lot of good Christmas movies for sure. Danny says, do you buy black market illegal Canadian maple syrup? No, I don't. No, I don't. I buy my maple syrup at the grocery store. Doug says Ojeda occasionally breathing fire on TYT. Yeah, he's on was it Rebel HQ on TYT? So he does videos there now. Yeah, he's solid. Celeste says, I wonder if David listens to the religious songs like Silent Night or Drummer Boy. I'm not against them. But I don't really, think about putting them on. Jingle All the Way, says Ramon. I haven't seen that one. That's with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Never saw that. Bad Santa, that's a good one. I saw Bad Santa once. I forget the entire plot of the movie, but I think I enjoyed it. All right, gonna be getting off soon. Do I have anything else to add here? Oh, let's just watch. So I have purposely not watched this. Where is it? Did I save it? Yeah. Because I was almost gonna maybe do a story on this, but I didn't because I don't know what the story would be. But let's watch this together. I think it's supposed to be extremely cringy. This is Jim Brewer doing some comedy. This guy's anti-vax. That's all I really know. I know he used to be on SNL. I think he was in Half Baked. Apart from that, I don't know much about his comedy, but Right Wing Watch here writing sarcastically, the right is starting to get better at comedy and it's making lefties nervous. All right, let's cringe together.
You know what a cockatoo...
Hold up. My audio is doubling up. Okay.
...is? A cockatoo...
Is audio peaking? Okay.
And that's what everyone's become. Little cockatoos staring at the screen.
Facts and figures, facts and figures. Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci.
What the fuck is going on? This is absurd.
Trust the science. Trust the science. Specialist, numbers going up. One mask, two masks, vaccinated, double.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what the hell to say there. What were they quote tweeting here? It's really just a matter of time before former SNL cast member Jim Breuer teamed up with Clay Clark to join his traveling cavalcade of election, COVID, and QAnon conspiracy theorists known as the Reawaken America Tour. So this is the Reawaken America Tour. All right, let's check out his comedy stylings. I'm sorry to do this to you, but we've gotten this deep. Let's go just one clip deeper.
Can you talk to me about comedy and why comedy is, or maybe you don't agree, but why comedy is truly one of the last places where completely free speech is allowed?
The jester was the greatest, most important person since the beginning of time, because the jester comes, he kind of brings his message, people laugh, and then he leaves. And hopefully some people go, hey, what did that guy just say? Comedy is the only thing that A, that heals, that B, that can also make you think. And if you
make you think. Yes, the first thing I thought is while watching this was how Jim Brewer's making me think. Oh my God. Okay.
Down that, and it's the last thing with free speech, which is why if you get, it's like any form of art. You can't just say, hey, here's my new thing. It's called a phone. You're going to have a million different reactions. You can't lump it in one sum and go, we don't like the phone because it's just offensive. And what is offensive? I even talk about in the new special. What's offensive? Defining the gender of a potato head toy? Is it going to war that should never be a war and people come home with no legs? Is that offensive? Is that on the front line? There's many, you can't define. Is it food that gives you cancer? Are we going to put what exactly is offensive? So comedy heals, and comedy is the most important element of human existence, if you ask me. It is a thing that can heal you from just the worst tragedy in life, the worst sickness you're dealing through. If you don't have comedy, you're in serious trouble. You need to be humbled. You need humility in life. And that is one of the essence of life. Faith, comedy, you need all that.
This guy talking about being humbled. One of the most ignorant fucking people I've seen in my life. Talking about how it's good to be humbled. Jesus Christ. His overall message there, yeah, that about comedy is correct. Obviously, yeah. Comedy heals. Comedy is great for you. Yeah. No issue there. But I don't know what you call this. This is comedy? Oh my God. Okay. Comedy doctor, says Mark. Yes, comedy doctor. Comedy doctor Jim Brewer. Jesus Christ. A lot of people call him Goat Boy. What's that from? That's either from SNL or that's from Half Baked, and I don't know which one it's from. Honestly, I don't really care. This guy's no George Carlin. No, he is not. Says typical Canadian. Yeah, not even close. Sarah says, is it true that in 2020 you chose to not criticize Biden because you wanted Trump to win? Go on my channel. I'm serious. Go on my channel right now on YouTube. In the search box on my channel, type in Joe Biden. Look at the videos that pop up and tell me if I was being easy on Joe Biden. I did countless videos tearing Joe Biden apart. So no, that's not true. Now, when it came to him versus, like, once he won the primary and we were getting into like October, November, yeah, I wasn't going to talk about, you know, Hunter Biden because that wasn't a story. If Hunter Biden was part of the campaign and did something that impacted the campaign in some way, then I guess it would have been a story. But I'm not going to use right-wing talking points to attack Joe Biden over nothing, when it was clear that Trump could not win a second term. So at that point, yeah, of course, I was very clear in terms of Trump needing to lose that election. But no, I went after Joe Biden constantly. Excuse me. Speaking of Half-Baked, I haven't actually seen Half-Baked. I should probably, considering how much weed I smoke, I should probably watch Half-Baked. I guess I would maybe enjoy it, though. Now I feel if he's like a major part of this movie, Jim Brewer, I'm not sure I could. I'm not sure how I would enjoy it if I'm just seeing you know, this lunatic act. But I can try. I can try. Oh, sorry. New chat. I missed it. Radzoso says, my favorite Christmas song is Walking in a Winter Wonderland by Eurythmics. That's a great one for sure. Yeah, I like that song a lot. Goat Boy was on SNL. Okay. Yeah, I watched a bit of SNL in the 90s, but I was young, so a lot of it's a blur. Thomas Mundo, thank you for your super sticker there. Much appreciated. All right, probably getting off very soon. Tyler VG says, I'd love David to light up a blunt on cam if he wouldn't get demonetized. I actually wonder. I mean, it's legal in Canada, so I wouldn't be breaking any laws. Yeah, I don't know if you can't do that. I'm going to assume you can't just because YouTube is ultra conservative with their policies, but I don't know. Karl Marx says, watch the debate between Sam Cedar and Jimmy Dore. It's very telling. Yes, it is. And actually, a few people have done like rewatches of it, like on their live streams. I know Mike from PA did one. I think Dylan Burns did one as well, where they rewatched the debate and basically commented throughout it. And it shows you that Jimmy was wrong about everything. Everything. I think Sam was wrong about one thing. I forget what it was now, but he was wrong about one thing in the debate. But Jimmy was wrong about everything. So you should go back. Like he equated Trump appointing 2 Supreme Court justices to the moon falling into Lake Michigan. Well, Trump got 3. So yeah, and that's just one example. It is remarkable how wrong Jimmy Dore was in that debate. Typical Canadian says, had you seen the Dore Cedar debate before you had phoned MR years ago? Just curious. I don't remember when the debate took place. I forget if that was before or after the call. The point of the call, and this is my fault for not communicating properly, was not to say that that Dora was right about anything. It was to say that if you know this person, if you two know each other, then can't you influence him kindly behind the scenes as opposed to, you know, just publicly like going after him? Now, what I didn't know at the time is that it's impossible to try and change Dora's mind. You cannot do it. So I'm not sure what is motivating him personally. You know, we could speculate whether it's the algorithm, money, audience capture, all that stuff. But obviously I have no idea what the actual motivation there is. But it was more just that at the time they knew each other. They were like good friends at one point. Like, if you know this person, can't you just privately talk to him and you know, influence him in the right direction? Well, as I said, later on, I tried to do that with Dora and to no success. So I didn't know that, of course, at the time because I did not, you know either of them. But no. So yeah, I was definitely wrong in the debate, but just because I had a lack of knowledge in terms of the ability or the inability to actually influence Dora in any direction. But yeah, it was never to defend Jimmy's positions. I mean, I think by the time I had called in, I think he had already done like conspiracies around Seth Rich and all that. So, you know, it was already clear that he was having some dumb videos. But I figured, hey, this guy does mostly not horrible content. Can't you just kindly push him in the right direction? But yeah, clearly that's not possible. Dustin Chalmers says, come on, David, get that spliff lit, bud. Well, I would not smoke in my room because that's not good. On top of that, though, I tend to vape just because it's a little cleaner than smoke. But I don't know. You know, maybe at some point on a more laid back stream. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Oh, I'd also learned later on, just going back to the Cedar Door stuff for a second. I'd learned later on that Sam Cedar was supposed to be on Jimmy Dore's show. So like the reason they had that debate was that Dore was going to be on the Majority Report, and then after that, Sam was going to go on Jimmy Dore's show. But after they had that debate, Jimmy just cut him off and never had him on his show. So I think that also led to Sam's anger at the time in that whole little feud that was going on back in 2017. But whatever. It is what it is. Do you have a weapon you prefer using in Halo Infinite, says Yankee Doodle? I like the battle rifle. That's what I tend to go to. Though, honestly, I tend to use whatever is in my hands. Like, I'll use the assault rifle if I start with that. I'll use the battle rifle if I start with that. So, you know, I can interchange. All right, I can smell dinner. So I'm going to get off now because I am freaking starving. And I can also hear that my kid would like some attention. So my partner's out there, but she's busy making dinner. So I will go now, but it's been fun. Thank you all for showing up. And I'll be here next week. At some point, I'm going to take a break. Like, I need a break for real, like an actual holiday break. So I'm not sure how I'm going to pull that off. Maybe I'll just shoot a bunch of videos beforehand. But yeah, so like Christmas break, you know, at least a few days, I hope. It'd be nice. But we will see. Next week, though, I'm back. So I will see you all later. Thank you all for showing up, and goodbye.